Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the TFT Perspective. Viewers, untold events have taken place all across the globe. In this week, a political change happened inside Sri Lanka. Surprisingly, one of the key leaders of the Marxist opposition group, who actually took only 3% votes back in 2019, has won the presidential elections inside Sri Lanka, which has caused a drastic change in the overall constitutionally within Sri Lanka and over the political landscape inside the region as well. The person who has won the elections, Mr. D. Anura Kumar Dissanayake, he is basically a very left-leaning political leader. He had his party initiated in 1970 and in the 80s as well. A lot of people are calling him very extremely radical when it comes to changes or overall structural changes inside Sri Lanka and elsewhere. And some people have also suggested, especially from the opposition side within Sri Lanka, that things are going to drastically change inside Sri Lanka after his appointment as the president. The key surprising factor which came into being was that his own party won only 3 seats when it comes to the parliamentary elections. But apparently, when it comes to the presidential elections, he was the main leader of the National People's Power Bloc. Basically, it's an alliance of very left-leaning parties against the centrist and nationalist parties. So we have with us Mr. Wakarke Korbi. We're going to discuss how this sudden shift in the political landscape of Sri Lanka is going to impact the region. And there is apparently again a hue and cry from our eastern neighbor India, which foresees him as another rival, especially since the fallout in Bangladesh, the removal of Sheikh Hasina's government. Now they are also picturing Mr. AKD as a rival when it comes to Indian politics and Indian policies in the region. Sir, just a sudden shift inside Sri Lanka, winning the presidential election with having just mere support in the parliament as well. Uh, what kind of systematic change is taking place inside South Asia, and for the foreseeable future, what we are going to witness by Mr. AKD?
I think rise of Mr. AKD in Sri Lankan politics is again being seen as a tectonic shift, just like Bangladesh. He is young, I think 55 years of age. And as you mentioned, his party was not very popular. But if we look at the uprisings, we go back 3 years. In 2022, there was uprising against
Mr. Rajapaksa and his government,
Rajapaksa's family and the president. And main reason was one, of course, was COVID. There was a fallout because Sri Lanka also depends, economy dependent on tourism and maybe some of the exports. And suddenly there was a dent. But of course, there were allegations of corruption against, I think, all the three leading families. If you look at Rajapaksa, is a rather late entrant. But if you look at Premadasa, one of his leader was standing in this election, or Vikramasinghe again from dynasty, or Bandaranayakes. So it means that people were fed up with the status quo. And I think AKD also played a huge part during those protests, as is being reported in Sri Lankan press. And he actually led those protests against President Rajapaksa. The other, I think, major aspect is the way he has got connected to people. Despite that this is a very old party, and even I think it was involved in some resurrections against the Sri Lankan state.
Yeah, back in the 70s and
80s. And this resulted into armed resistance. But then they were crushed, and somehow Marxists couldn't. Although Sri Lankans are, if you look at the education, is more than 90%. It's the most educated lot in South Asia, well-mannered, very soft people. And then, of course, we look at their politics as being generally center-left leaning, because people like their. And there was a time when Sri Lankan per capita income was the highest in South Asia. So it means that the issues related to corruption, development, jobs, then of course is governance, became the main issues. And that's where I think he exploited the situation. Now we have to see how it impacts the foreign policy of Sri Lanka, of the region. Already, as you mentioned, India is disturbed because there are now articles appearing in the Indian press. That's a typical, I would say, pressure tactics. That before he comes and takes power, then they start
Doesn't
throwing
this
the.
go negatively when it comes to, a new leader being appointed? They should be cozying up with him rather than, implying pressure that, yeah, we think that you might be our rival now just because you have won the elections.
I think that is the latter part of Chanakya's neighborhood first policy. If you look at neighborhood first policy of India, it mainly implies that they would like to have good relations with their neighbors. But within that, there was definitely China was never, as far as India-China relations are, there is hostility. Pakistan, we fought 4 wars. So we are left with smaller states in South Asia, and India even through BIMSTEC, the Bay of Bengal initiative, wanted basically to take Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bangladesh on one side. So that's how they also impacted SAARC. But now I think maybe with resurrection of anti-India forces in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives, maybe we can look at SAARC then again maybe coming to life. It is almost dead. Why India is worried? Because after and during revolt against Rajapaksas, Indian agencies again got the opportunity. They entered because Rajapaksa were the family who actually crushed
Crush the
the
LTT insurgency, yes.
LTT insurgency in 2009, and they were able to then integrate, the I would say dissident groups and all that. So India was basically waiting for an opportunity. Midway, they had good relations with I think both the Mahendra Rajapaksa and before that Gotabaya Rajapaksa. But India was now looking for an alternative. So they were very happy when there was a revolt. I think if you follow Indian press, so were one banking on Vikramasinghe, and then mainly it was Premadasa because he was a opposition leader, and Raw had then re-entered. Their foreign office was very busy. I think Indian High Commission in
I remember
Colombo.
one of the interviews, the Indian anchor was suggesting that what if Mr. AKD does win the presidential election, and apparently the other side said that no, he's not going to win it, irrespective of the whatever happens.
Yeah, that was Palki Sharma first
Yes.
post, and she was interviewing the likely because they thought maybe the incumbent president Vikramasinghe, who was kind of interim president, would continue. And Vikramasinghe also had, I think, balanced policy as far as India and China is concerned. But as far as AKD is concerned, he's a newcomer. By and large, nobody betted on it. And but what we are like looking at reports appearing in, let's say, South China Post, Morning Post, there is an indication that he's going to tilt toward China. There's also talk of that Adani Group had a power project in Sri Lanka, 350 megawatts and millions of dollars. Most probably that's going to be shelved because AKD feels that wherever there have been corruption in dealing, even on I think on Hambantota seaport, deep seaport, probably is going to do some renegotiation. And China would be very happy to do it. The other is that basically India is now worried that their Chanakya's neighborhood policy. Even I think Nepal is not very comfortable. Bhutan is negotiating. I think we mentioned in one of the earlier podcasts directly with China. So practically, everybody, in the South Asia is unhappy with India or having a hostile relationship. And now, if they were banking on Sri Lanka to be, an island of good relationship, I think again, Mr. Doval and Modi has to sit down again and go to the drawing board and see what happens. So far, the sentiment is not very positive about India, despite that they are claiming that Mr. AKD traveled to India. He met, let's say, Jay Shankar. That is a normal thing before the elections. Because a lot of people from Sri Lanka do travel to India, being a large neighbor. And India did provide them, I think, some lifeline in terms of finances when they were under stress. We will not undermine that. But overall, AKD was also critic of, Indian operation by Indian peacekeeping forces, so-called, during Rajiv Gandhi's time. And you remember that Rajiv Gandhi was then later on even assassinated by a Tamil woman.
Yes.
And so AKD was, I think, historically has remained against that. It's not. He's also talking of energy sovereignty. This is, I think, very interesting term.
That's why he's been targeting the Adani power project
Yeah.
inside Sri
So
Lanka.
Adani is having a tough time in Bangladesh,
Hmm.
and now another power plant is going to be shut down in Sri Lanka. So let's see. But I'm sure AKD would like to have working relationship. I think Pakistani leadership has already congratulated him,
Hmm.
and Pakistan and Sri Lanka also enjoy, I think, camaraderie and very good relationship. I had very good Sri Lankan friends even in military, and when they were fighting Tamil Tigers, I think main support, military training and hardware.
Uh,
Pakistan was one of the main
hmm.
supporters. So Sri Lankans have always honored it. So I'm sure with him coming, and he's also looking at, I think, three, four important things. Macroeconomy itself,
Yeah.
because he has to deal with IMF.
He wants to ensure that there is reduction in the income tax being established by the previous government.
Mm.
He wants to reduce the prices of medicine. Apparently, there is a poor tax as well. So it will be difficult for him since there is already an ongoing deal and package by the International Monetary Fund of worth $2.5 billion in order to run the affairs inside Sri Lanka after the debacle in 2022. So when it comes to Pakistan, especially you mentioned Sri Lanka has a very cozy relationship with it. How can we enter into the fray after this sudden change? Because this is a completely different kind of government. We don't have the Rajapaksas or a nationalist approach government inside Sri Lanka. So a left-leading Marxist systematic who has a very different political side of affairs within his own landscape. How are we going to negotiate things at our end?
I think within South Asia, Pakistan has followed the Chinese policy, because if you look at China,
Hmm.
they have like Pakistan-China relation, irrespective of whether they were semi-dictatorships, whether they were Sharifs or People's Party or Imran Khan. China has maintained a cordial relationship. So I think strategically, Pakistan, Sri Lanka relations will not be affected. But let's say if he has some anti-India leaning,
Hmm.
definitely he's going to look around and see what are the countries which can support him and Sri Lanka in times of crisis, or and he would like to actually expand the bilateral trade as well. We have already, I think, in terms of some of the food imports coming from Sri Lanka, and then let's say Pakistani food grain going to Sri Lanka. Then we can collaborate on information technology. There are a lot of Sri Lankan teachers who teach in Pakistan.
Hmm.
This nation is one of the largest eye donors, and it means that the medical system is good, so we can also learn. And in terms of military advice and military hardware, I think Pakistan has already been forthcoming. So I don't think so it will impact. But if you look at the common friends now,
Hmm.
like Bangladesh, Pakistan, China, Bangladesh triangle is collaborating,
Hmm.
and would like to even Bangladeshi. One of the professors they said that we should have a nuclear treaty with Pakistan. So, in terms of, I think, defense collaboration, Pakistan has a lot to offer to Sri Lanka. Then, of course, is shipping. Then, of course, is commercial airline flights.
Hmm.
It also falls on important aviation route. So, I don't think so. So, if you look at Sri Lanka, Maldives, then you have Bangladesh, Pakistan, China, and even Nepal. So we have, I think, anti-India forces arrayed, and definitely there's a natural urge to have converging interests.
Yeah, another important question when it comes to the Indian political hierarchy is: don't you think that they're making a very strange kind of perception, especially with the recent changes inside Bangladesh, now Sri Lanka, about Pakistan and China, that we are now suddenly surrounded by enemies, and that in order to quash this approach by hostile agencies of India's hostile powers, the only thing left for them is to ensure that BJP comes up strong inside India again in the next elections. Maybe they are trying to make a perception like this, because I don't find a reason for Mr. AKD to be very anti-Indian, especially when you have no land border with any other country, just one small oceanic route which is between India and Sri Lanka. So I don't think so when it comes to overall perception why India does want to play a very, high-ended moral advantage role, or a superior egoistic maniac role inside the region, or they want to ensure that whatever the BJP's political mass is inside India, that still should be maintained in order to, ensure that their objectives are completed.
Yeah, I think there has been a change of guards in South Asia. Go back 10 years when Modi came to power in 2014. I think India had good luck in the region. If you look at Hasina Wajid,
Hmm.
Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh, India had a free run, I would say.
Yes,
Bhutan
completely.
was almost like a colony. They could pressurize, although Nepal had started becoming independent since the Communist Party came in. And Sri Lanka, by and large,
Hmm.
was, I think, they were very comfortable with Maldives. And I think in last, you can say 1 year, like President Muizu coming in Maldives started from there. There was a India Out campaign.
Hmm.
There was an India Out campaign in Bangladesh. Now there is, I think, a reason. Although India claims that they have a neighborhood policy, but mainly they were, utilizing these smaller countries against either China or Pakistan.
Hmm.
So if you look at Indira Doctrine, again, these are very high sounding words. You had a Monroe Doctrine in Americas by the Americans in, I think, 19th century, that no European power will now be allowed to come and, let's say, colonize, because
Hmm.
now Americans with them are very strong. And that's why uh,
Hmm.
these, let's say, North America and South America mainly remained basically Indian, American, I would say, area of influence, and they didn't allow. India also developed, I think in early 80s, the Indira Doctrine.
Hmm.
So it's a chapa, or they cheated from Monroe Doctrine, that in South Asia, all neighbors will have to either follow Indian policy, foreign policy, or they not be allowed to become hostile. Less Pakistan, definitely.
Hmm.
So mainly it was anti-Pakistan or anti-China, and they had success. Also, I'm not saying that India. So if you had your good time, you can always have a bad time when there is a change in guards. So you had Maldives now followed by Bangladesh, and now Sri Lanka, and almost hostile leadership has come, and then they were voted by the people. Or the
Hmm.
revolution in
Hmm.
Bangladesh is by the people, so it means that people do not like Indian interference, Indian hegemonic attitude. They detest it.
Hmm.
Despite that, of course, it's comparatively it's a very huge power, and South Asia is the largest power, military and economic. But people don't like. So I think India should read Alexander Dugin's theory, fourth political theory, which basically says that small or larger powers, you got to respect each other and
Hmm.
then jointly develop. I think a very interesting statement came from President Xi of China when
Hmm.
he was constituting that irrespective of the size, we are going to dwell on the strategic partnership. So that's how the foreign policy should be. But
Yes.
India probably, I think, will try to punch above its weight and show. Well, I think we should also discuss what happens to, let's say, Indo-Pacific.
Yeah, that would
That's
be very interesting, because uh, India is being the main player now. US and its partners seeing that India has lost its so-called hegemonic touch inside the region. What would happen with the Indo-Pacific? Because I think Mr. Biden didn't introduce Modi in the last meeting of the
yeah.
Indo-Pacific. Yeah.
And he said, "Who's next?"
Yes. Who's next?
I think it was deliberately done, and Biden,
There
it's
is a very different picture. Mr. Biden did that, and then during the UNGA summit, he held hands with Dr. Yunus from
yeah,
Bangladesh, gave him a nice big hug. So
yeah.
there's a very big. So that Jadoo ki Jhappi is also not working these days, I think.
So there are other people with Jadoo ki Jappi. I think
Yeah.
this is very interesting. I think Jaishankar was recently interviewed by one of the
Yes.
presidents. It was very interesting when he asked. This is a question we have been raising. That how could you be in conflicting alliances?
Hmm.
You're part of the Quad, which is definitely anti-China and indirectly anti-Russia.
Yes.
Basically, it's an anti-Eurasian, and I would say India should be ashamed that it has been a colony,
Yeah.
and the three others, U.S., Japan, and Australia,
They
were
have been imperial
colonizers,
powers. Yeah.
and now you are sitting with them and then working against Eurasian Brotherhood. So, and then you also want to sit in the SCO. and BRICS. And I think precisely the same question was asked: how can you justify it? And he passed a very funny remark, Jai Shankar, that we can chew the gum also and walk also. I mean, I don't know, in foreign policy, how do you? So he was basically trying to say that we can do both. We can be in the Eastern Bloc, and actually the other big powers want us, and it's not we going there. So there's a kind of arrogance. So I think India has to now look at Indo-Pacific, because Sri Lanka, looking at a region itself, I'm sure they're going to maintain good relations with, but definitely AKD is not a capitalist. He is a
It's going to be
Marxist.
very difficult when you have a Chinese port in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, in Pakistan,
Yeah.
completely surrounding India.
Yeah.
Very difficult to do that now.
Yeah. So even internally, I'll come to your point that what they want to do internally. If you look at the periphery of India, I would say all four corners are now, let's say, not very comfortable or hostile. China in the north, Pakistan in northwest, you have Sri Lanka in the south and Maldives, and then you have Bangladesh and Nepal. So technically, India within SAARC is now totally surrounded, as per their media, by hostile. And they think it's a sadish, it's a conspiracy. Bangladesh was a conspiracy. And some of these guys are saying that, especially the Bhaks, that even here there was a conspiracy with Chinese or whatever. Now come to internal, geographically, northeast burning one corner. You have northwest burning, although we don't consider occupied Kashmir through these farce elections. Indian Punjab burning. Then you have Naxalites, in the heartland. And then you have south, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, not very comfortable. So practically, whether it is internal or external, India is now burning at four corners. So this also provides a very good opportunity to Pakistan to consolidate relationship with neighbors, to pursue our interests, and then of course to bring India to its senses.
India's media is kept on repeating that probably the Gauri missiles from Pakistan are going to be deployed in Bangladesh. We are going to witness a Cuban Missile type of crisis again. I don't know how we are so close to each other. Why would we even require to deploy Gauris in Bangladesh?
I think Bangladesh, even when we were there, there used to be discussion in the war games that in case Pakistan gives certain missiles, and there's a talk of military collaboration. I'm sure we're going to start with the air forces doing joint
Yeah,
exercises.
we have also witnessed that a lot of ATGMs have been supplied to them already.
And they genuinely need for the defense. Then, of course, are as we've discussed, that what is going to happen to Indian Northeast. Even recently we had reports about cookies spread by the Indian media that 900 cookies come from Myanmar. And now India has asked the Myanmar Janta as well as the dissidents to come to Delhi. And I don't know what are they going to talk. Basically, they are now worried that this war is going to expand into Northeast. They have problem with Nagas also. Bengal is already burning. And Bhavishya Malika could be, becoming a reality within India and outside.
Yeah, I guess money doesn't solve everything.
Yes.
That's the main thing. So that's it for today, folks. Please do leave a like and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much for watching us. Bye-bye.